up, Cap?
What's going on, John? How are you?
You tell me. You're the star of the show because you were called away on national team duty before we were set to pair up last time. Completely understandable because there was stuff that those who have worn the crest of the stars and stripes and kind of keeping paying attention to, and that's the first thing that I want to get into with you. So how was it being an interested, invested party in having to analyze at the same time something where you wanted a result to happen? And did you get to keep the professional face? Was the heart on the sleeve? What was going on with the U.S. match last week?
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, you hate to analyze a game or be a part of it when it's bad, right? It's not fun. I don't like criticizing other players because I know obviously what goes into it, and there's good days and bad days, and you just never want to come across as like the old guy that's just bashing young guys.
Back in my day.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many of these guys had already had way better careers than me, so who am I to judge them? But at the same time, I mean, it was disappointing, both games. We weren't able to get out of the press against Japan. We weren't really able to break down Saudi Arabia when they were deep in the second game. I know people say, oh, well, at least it was better in the second game. Well, it was better because Saudi Arabia let us have the ball. We didn't do much with it. So that's not great with it being the last two games leading into the World Cup.
All right, so let's turn it into a mentoring question here. When you get into situations, and I mean, you can apply it to if you were in the room with the men's national team if you want, but there are times where there is an expectation going in from the external factors where a lot of folks will sit there and say, well, hey, you're better than them. You should do X, Y, and Z. And then the result doesn't go the way that everyone, including yourself, anticipated here. How do you build from a negative result as a mentor, but not be negative about it? It comes the constructive criticism and building into it. How difficult is that to learn as a skill, as a mentor, in talking to other individuals where an event like that might happen?
Very difficult because there's a few things going on. Like one is you can't have success without failure, right? It's almost impossible. And so failure is key, and it's key because it's the best opportunities to learn, right? It keeps you grounded, and it keeps you always wanting more, always wanting to learn, and using those opportunities to find out, okay, what went wrong? What went wrong for us? What went wrong for me on the day? Right. So that's number one. But number two is we also want to focus on positives. So in any loss or any bad performance, there was good things, right? It was not bad for 90 minutes. And so we like to try and train the brain to focus on the good things first and say, okay, even though we lost, or even though we weren't happy about our performance, what did we do well, right? What can we take away from this game that was good, that was positive? And then, okay, what can we learn from to help us in the future, right? What didn't go well? What can we learn from? And how do we use that? And there's a fine balance between doing those two things because, we don't want to focus on the negative all the time. But we do need to learn, and it's good opportunities to learn. And so I think for the national team, it's a good time to have this learning experience. Obviously, you wish you had it a little bit earlier, maybe not the two games leading into the World Cup, but it provides an opportunity to learn from, to like, okay, we didn't do well with a team that presses us. So what happens if England presses us, right? How can we do better? And what happens if Wales sits back like Saudi Arabia? How can we break that down? So those are good learning experiences, good video to show, because there were a few good things here and there, right? At least you get the shutout in the second game. So, there's building blocks, but not losing the confidence in the group is going to be key, right? The guys need to remain bought in. because it's the only choice they have at this point, right? You're not changing things leading right into the World Cup, right? So hopefully they stay bought in. Hopefully the confidence remains high.
And at the same time, you've got to tune out all of the negativity that's attached to it, because the days after, the next day after, days after, regardless of which result we're talking about here, I mean, it is pitchforks and tiki torches, storming the gates of the castle because of all of the negativity. So how difficult is that to sit there and understand, that yes, this noise is around us, but B, understanding that there are individuals, mentors slash coaches slash whomever, that have our best interest at heart, to where we don't get wrapped up in the negative message and focus on the larger task at hand. Because once again, that seems like it's a very difficult balance as a player, because you're going to read the paper, you're going to read social media, you're going to see those elements that are there, but you've got to tune it out. And it's a delicate balance, I would think, for mentors, mentees, players, anyone that's attached to a situation, knowing how important it is to a large group of folks.
Definitely. And that's where the pressure comes from, right? I mean, those guys were under tremendous pressure these past two games. They're all fighting for a spot to get onto the plane to Qatar, right? And that is in itself a lot of pressure. It's not an excuse, because obviously they're going to play under huge amounts of pressure at the World Cup, and so they need to learn how to deal with that and still play up to their standards. But yeah, of course, everyone has an opinion. All right, every fan thinks they know who should play and how they should play, and why so and so shouldn't be included, right? Or what Greg Berhalter needs to do. That's the nature of sports, and it gets everyone involved and everyone's interested, which is great. And that's the beauty of the World Cup, right? There's going to be millions and millions of people here in the U.S. that are interested in the team and how they're doing and what they're doing. And that's fantastic. But as a player, yeah, of course you can't listen to it. I mean, I would advise those guys to not even be on social media. Like once from the roster announcement through the World Cup, like, you take 2 months off social media, right? It's not the end of the world. Unless you're very, very strong mentally, or don't actually read it. But like you said, it's very, very difficult. I would just completely stay off of it.
How long did it take you to gain that mental strength to where you could be a reference point for those who might be seeking that kind of a counsel? Or is it still something that, even for you on the other side of a playing career now as a mentor, that is still a work in progress? How long did it take you to get everything in its proper context?
Yeah, it took some time, right? I mean, I think it was different back when I started playing. There was no social media, but there was like chat boards, like big soccer online chat room type stuff.
And Dan Shaughnessy at the Boston Globe.
Exactly.
Personification of get out of my yard guy for a newspaper columnist.
Exactly. We were stuck reading the newspaper.
Uh-huh.
But I think as a young pro, I even read those things, and you're interested and you want validation of your performances, and you want people to like you and think that you're great and things like that. But I think at some point you realize, like, a lot of the people that are commenting on these things are kids, right? They're teenagers, they're washed up athletes, they're guys that have never kicked a soccer ball. They're, it's just people with opinions that are loud sometimes, or they enjoy the sport and want to have conversations about it, even though it's not healthy for the athlete to hear it, right? And I saw this one thing one time with Robinson Cano, a baseball player for the Yankees, and it was they found they interviewed all these people, and they were asking him about Cano and how they were all saying how bad he was. He was having a bad season, right? And they all how bad he was, this and that. And then they brought Cano out and met these people, like, right? They'd have somebody say something bad, and then they'd bring him out right away just to say hi. And the people were so nice to him face to face, And it was just, such a good example of like social media and people's opinions and stuff, because they would talk tough behind a keyboard. But in reality, if somebody was talking bad about Pulisic, but they had an opportunity to get an autograph or meet him or talk to him, right? They'd love to, they'd want to, and they'd support him. So, it takes time to realize those things, but those little interactions helped me.
What about using it as fuel? Do you and your peers use that as fuel at the same time? It's like, well, I'll show you, you wrote that about me and I'll show you. But I would think that that's also another double-edged sword, because you probably could get too into that idea and it counteracts the idea of the team's success, where you want to show something and then you press and go over that bar and wanting to show somebody who is a keyboard warrior what really is going on with you.
Yeah, I think it's important that the fuel, it doesn't come from the keyboard warriors, right? I think that when athletes use fuel, I think most of them are using it from more in tune people, right? Like national writers, coaches. Yeah, personal example, right? When I got traded to Atlanta, I was not happy with Berhalter at all. Like I didn't want to be traded. You know, we didn't see eye to eye, and I was upset and mad about it. And so I was absolutely extra motivated when I got down to Atlanta, especially when I played against Columbus. Right. That's one small example of like, hey, no, I'm going to show you. So I think athletes do use that. But usually that's in the context of like, if Matt Doyle writes something bad about somebody, that they're more likely to see than hopefully, a keyboard warrior.
And I admit, I'm sure that we all, in our manner, way, shape, form, or career, we sit there and we'll see something and it'll rankle us the wrong way. When it comes to generational differences, are the younger players today more in tune with that? Do they get it? Do they slough it off? Or how do they respond? How do the younger players of today respond to stuff like that? Where I'm sure that you and I would sit there and, it's like, if we were younger, yeah, let's go out back and we'll settle it, that way. How are the younger players when it comes to that kind of stuff? Are you seeing?
It's across the board, but I'd say that they're more in tuned right now. And that's just because of social media, I think, right? It's just more access, it's more in your face, it's more judgments, it's more out there, and more opportunities to read it, right? You had to go out of your way when I was a young pro to hear this stuff, right? You had to actually pick up a newspaper, you had to do something, right? Not just, open up your phone and see something. So, I think it's way more prevalent, but they're learning skills that we didn't have to learn, right? And it's helping them. So I do think there is that edge of like toughness that they are developing at a younger age, or need to develop at a younger age than we did, that hopefully will benefit them in the long run.
Do you and Greg, as mentors, learn from your mentees, especially when it comes to that generational divide, when it comes to, describing something in a certain way or something like that? How much of mentoring is a two-way street for you guys?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. I think that it's important to continue to learn. And by learning, I'm not just meaning reading books or studying stuff, but yeah, actually having these conversation with kids. Like I learned stuff from my own kids, right? I think it's important for them to know that we don't know everything. We're not perfect. Everything that we say is not ideal for everyone that's out there, right? Everyone reacts to things differently. And some kids really impress us with how strong they are, and how well they're able to bounce back from some bad things and poor things. And we see the other side too, of kids that really struggle. Even though they're good players, they struggle with confidence. So these are all opportunities for us to learn of, okay, what can you do in a situation like this? What can you do in a situation like that? What can help a kid? And finding, like I said earlier, not every person reacts the same way to certain situations, right? And how do you get through to kids that are dealing with certain situations, and what they're going through personally. But that's the beauty of it, and is every situation is so different, and that's why we try and go in open minded, and not with like okay, we're going to work on this, right? It's more pertain to the individual.
Yeah, the fluid lesson plan, I think that is probably one of the better ways to describe it. What was the last thing that you learned from your kids?
What have they taught? Well, language is always
Yes.
a lesson. But I don't know. My kid was doing my son was doing a social studies project the other day, and God, what was it on? I can't. Oh, it was just on Europe. He had to research Europe, and he's doing all these facts and stuff. And he was like, "Dad, did you know this?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." He was talking about the size of some countries, and then he was talking about the Alps and how many countries it was in. And I was like, "No, it can't be in like 7 countries or something like that, like the big mountain range." And just little things like that. That I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that. And I think as adults, it's okay to tell our kids like, yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't know this. Like, I don't know everything. And they give me some grief every now and then, but it's okay.
Well, because I think that we're predisposed, I think to those that are younger than us to sit there and come across as, yes, we are omnipotent. We know everything. We're like Orson from Mork and Mindy, the Wizard of Oz kind of a thing, where we have we have giant brain, and there is a lot of stuff in there. And I think that that's probably something that has come along over time, that it's okay to say that you don't know. It's okay to sit there. It's okay not to be okay when it comes to your emotions and to your mental makeup, but it's also okay to sit there and say, no, I don't know. And then
Yep.
it's okay for that two-way street of learning to continue, regardless of who's the teacher in that case.
Definitely, definitely. And that's absolutely a good lesson for the kids, right? It's important for them to know, like, they don't have to know everything, right? On and off the field, in the classroom, you don't need to know everything, but you have to be open to learning if you don't know. Yeah, that's a key for life, right? Being open to hearing some criticism, to hearing some coaching, and that's a constant skill that people need to continue to work on.
Okay. We've got close to 10 minutes left here. I want to get into what we're looking at with Atlanta United with only 2 matches left, but look at it from that mentoring prism and a couple of the ideas that are attached to it. The idea of the must win and the pressure that's attached to that. Right now, we know Atlanta United, they've got to win their last 2, focusing on that. And I guess we can take this in a couple of different stages. The idea of focusing on the task in front of you and not worrying about stuff you can't control. When it comes to discussing that kind of stuff with your mentors, I know we all want to control, because we're all competitive. We want to control as many aspects of our life as possible. We want to control everything, even though we can't.
Mm-hmm.
What are those conversations like with your mentees about just take care of what's going on in front of you, what happens around you that you can't control, you can't worry about? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, it's controllables and uncontrollables. And I was just having a conversation the other day with the young man, and he's a defender, and he was talking about how his team's struggling to score goals, and they've got some big games this weekend. He said, "Well, I'm not sure we're going to be able to score though." And I said, "Well, hey, you can't control if you guys score all the time, right? Hey, maybe you can make a run and have um, an effect on the offensive side of the game, right? But typically not. So you can't control that, right? But you can control how you play, how your impact on the team, right? How you guys are able to keep the ball out of the back of the net, right? And give yourself the best chance to get a result. And it's similar, right? Atlanta United is now in a position, due to their own performances throughout the season, that they don't control their own destiny. And it is what it is right now. And so the only thing that you can control is winning your games. And if the pieces fall, they fall, and if they don't, they don't. But to give yourself the opportunity, you have to do your own job, and their job is to win. And I think that, you hate early on in the season to say, "Oh, this is a must win," because, like you said, of the pressure aspect. But it is a fact now. Like, it is a must win if they have a chance of making the playoffs. And sometimes that pressure is a good thing for some players and some teams. It's a recognition of, okay, I have this pressure on me. I have pressure because there's expectations, and I need to play up to that expectation today. It's important for me. It's important for the team, and sometimes it brings out an extra amount of focus and intensity that sometimes is lacking. So not all pressure is bad pressure. We try and talk with our mentees about, and so it's using this pressure in a good way to say, okay, hey, the performance needs to equal the pressure, and so it is what it is right now in their regard for Atlanta United.
Who are some of the best teammates that you had that dealt with pressure situations and thrived on it? Who were good examples of that with you and around you?
Yeah, I always say that Clint Dempsey and Joseph were two guys that had elite mind frames of, like, they were really good people to be in the locker room with, good guys, can talk to and stuff like that. And they go across the line and they completely change their mentality, right? They are just different people, because once they get on the field, they will do whatever it takes to have success. It does not matter who you are, what's in their way. If it's a training, if it's a game, if it's a preseason game, if it's an MLS Cup, it doesn't matter. And those two guys were two of the best that I ever saw do it consistently. Like I said, it didn't matter if it was a preseason game or a World Cup game, right? Clint Dempsey was going to be the same person no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you have that mentality, right, there's the pressure means there is still pressure, but they don't fear it, right? They thrive on it. And Joseph was the same way. There was tremendous amounts of pressure on Joseph, even when I was playing, to score goals. Like, we needed him to score goals. And he was had the most goals in the 3 years that, I was with him in MLS. So, he just thrived on it. And then there's other guys like some older players. I don't even know if everyone would know the names, like Steve Ralston, who had a demeanor kind of similar to mine, where he just didn't get rattled. Steve just understood his strengths. He understood his game. He was a veteran at the time I played with him, and every game it was just consistent level of Steve Ralston, one of the best players to ever play in MLS.
So then let me ask you this when it comes to environment in a must-win situation. New England currently out of the playoff picture, not a whole lot to play for except for spoiler. Atlanta heading into an environment where I doubt very seriously the lower bowl will be full in Foxborough, so the environment might be neutral for you.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily something that you can thrive off of unless there's Johnny from the South Bay who took the hour drive and he's going, "Come on, Revs, you got this one. You got this one. It's all under control." One of those kind of things. You're not really going to be facing a most hostile environment. It might be a neutral environment, and you've still got to get your work done. Does not having that energy to feed off of make it just as difficult sometimes?
It can. But I think that's more in the middle of the season when you're kind of just in it and it's the grind, right? Then it's nice to have that crowd. It's nice to have that pick you up. It's nice to have that energy. But in a situation that Atlanta United is in, with a must-win situation, I would hope that it didn't matter if it was an empty stadium or 100,000 people. right? The performance would be the performance, right? You're not banking on needing any extra motivation or energy because of the situation that you're in. And I know that New England's got nothing to play for, but God, every season we see these types of games where even it's a team that's fighting for seeding, second, third, and you're playing a team that's already out of the playoffs, and somehow the team out of the playoffs gets a result. And a lot of these guys are fighting for contracts for next season, whether they're with New England or anybody else in the league. So there's a lot to play for on the individual level for those guys in New England. So it's not going to be easy, and hopefully the guys in Atlanta understand that and know that.
And then Martin from Holyoke sitting there going, "Come on, Parkhurst, what's the matter with you over there? You got to get it going on." And I mean, it's a must-win situation. You've got to tune everything else. Like Martin from Holyoke, you have to tune him out and focus on what's going on in front of you. And what does your gut tell you about this road trip to a place that can be difficult in a difficult situation?
My gut feels good about it. I mean, they're coming off positive results. That game against Philly was probably the best performance I've seen Atlanta United play this year. It's really unjust that they didn't get 3 points. But the performance was very good. And so hopefully that gives them confidence. I know it was a couple weeks now, but I think they're unbeaten in 3, coming off of good performances. So the confidence should be there, and you never know what's going to happen, right? There's still a chance. So, you win this game. Columbus, here in Ohio is under a ton of pressure. Miami, I don't see it. So you never know. So I like their chances to go in there and win this weekend, but it's not going to be a steamroll. That's for sure.
All right. So with the high school season, you've got training going on right now with high schools. College is underway. What's going on with Beyond Goals with you and Greg these days?
We've been really busy on the individual level. August and September were the 2 busiest months for us that we've ever had. So as far as signups and meeting with individuals and doing sessions, so that's been keeping us really busy. I think I had mentioned last time that I'm coming down for a couple different events in a couple weeks. I think I'm going to get down there for the home finale, and then the lead up from that into the events of that next week for Beyond Goals. So excited about that. Excited to get back down for a game. It's been a while.
No doubt about it. And it will be great to see you, especially for the Madness Decision Day and what it hopes to bring. At MF Parkhurst on the Twitters with the fuzzy background, so he's not telling us where he is this morning.
Just nothing cool behind me. I got out of the office. I was comfortable where I was this morning, so I stayed put.
There you go. At BG Mentoring, Cap, as always, it's great to see you from a virtual distance, and it'll be great to see you down here for Decision Day. Thanks as always for letting us know about mentoring, what you and Greg are doing with Beyond Goals, and helping out not just the next generation, but folks above and below where we are in the chronology. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's always fun to see you, my friend.
Likewise, John. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too. Michael Parkhurst and Beyond Goals. So Michael Parkhurst, it's always great to catch up with him. And, it is very, very cool to kind of be able to pull back the curtain and get his feedback on things that we see with Atlanta United, but at the same time apply them to the mentoring aspect of things. And so it's really these conversations for me, they're great to have with both Greg and with Michael on a weekly basis with our friends. That's your Friday free kick from our friends at Beyond Goals, at BG Mentoring on Twitter, at MF Parkhurst, and the Twitterless Greg Garza, I believe, on the Twitters. But once again, very, very cool that we get to spend time with them and discuss things.